Raymond's hands burned raw as he pulled Diana Winters from her blazing car, a janitor and single father risking everything to save the CEO's life. Instead of gratitude, her first words sliced through the smoke with chilling precision: "You're fired." Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The scream of metal against concrete echoed through the underground parking garage as the luxury sedan's brakes failed. Raymond Mitchell watched in horror from his maintenance cart as the sleek black Mercedes careened into a concrete pillar, the impact sending a shower of sparks across the polished floor. For a suspended moment, there was only silence, the calm before chaos. Then, with a whoosh that sucked the air from his lungs, flames erupted from beneath the crumpled hood. "Jesus Christ," Raymond whispered, abandoning his cart and sprinting toward the wreckage. The acrid smell of burning oil and melting plastic filled his nostrils as he approached. Through the spider-webbed windshield, he could make out a woman slumped against the steering wheel, a thin stream of blood trickling down her temple. Raymond had cleaned these floors for 3 years, nodding respectfully whenever executives passed by without so much as a glance in his direction. He recognized her immediately: Diana Winters, the newly appointed CEO of Arcturus Technology, the Ice Queen. They called her in the break room, the woman who had slashed the maintenance budget by 30% last month, forcing 3 of his co-workers into unemployment. None of that mattered now. The flames were spreading rapidly, licking up the sides of the engine compartment. Raymond yanked at the driver's side door. It was jammed shut, warped by the impact. He could feel the heat intensifying, sweat already soaking through his uniform. "Miss Winters," he shouted, pounding on the window. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. She was alive, but clearly dazed. Raymond looked around desperately. His maintenance cart, there was a fire extinguisher there, but the flames were growing too quickly. He needed to get her out now. He grabbed a tire iron from his cart and smashed it against the driver's window. The safety glass splintered, but held. He struck again, harder, and this time it shattered, tiny cubes raining across the leather interior. Reaching through the jagged opening, he unlocked the door and tried again to wrench it open. It gave slightly, enough for him to wedge his shoulder against it. With a grunt of effort, he forced it wide enough to reach inside. "Ms. Winters, I need to get you out," he said, fumbling with her seatbelt. "The car's on fire." Her eyes opened fully then, focusing on his face with sudden clarity. "Who?" she began, before a fit of coughing overtook her. "I'm Raymond, building maintenance. We need to move now." The buckle finally released, and he slid his arms beneath her, marveling briefly at how light she felt as he pulled her from the wreckage. Her designer suit was smeared with soot, her carefully styled hair disheveled. She smelled of expensive perfume and smoke. Raymond carried her 20 yards away from the burning vehicle before setting her down carefully against a concrete pillar. The flames had engulfed the engine compartment now, sending black smoke billowing toward the ceiling. The fire suppression system hadn't triggered, another casualty of recent budget cuts, he thought bitterly. "My bag," Diana coughed, struggling to stand. "My laptop is in there." "Stay put," Raymond ordered, surprising himself with his authoritative tone. "I'll get it." Before she could protest, he was running back toward the inferno. The passenger side wasn't yet consumed by flames. He yanked the door open, grabbed the leather briefcase from the floorboard, and retreated just as the flames began to crawl across the dashboard. By the time he returned to Diana's side, security guards were pouring into the garage, followed closely by the wail of approaching sirens. Raymond handed her the briefcase, noting the slight tremor in her manicured hands as she clutched it to her chest. "Thank you," she said almost grudgingly. "Are you hurt? There's blood." He gestured to her forehead. She touched it gingerly, examining the red smear on her fingertips with detached curiosity. "Just a cut. I'm fine." A security guard knelt beside them. "Miss Winters, are you all right? Paramedics are on their way." "I said I'm fine, Jenkins." Her voice had regained its customary steel. "But what I want to know is why the sprinkler system didn't activate." Raymond watched her transformation with fascination. The vulnerable woman he'd pulled from the wreckage was gone, replaced by the formidable executive he'd glimpsed from afar. Even disheveled and soot-stained, she commanded respect. Fire trucks arrived, their red and blue lights painting the garage in surreal flashes. Firefighters deployed with practiced efficiency, dousing the burning Mercedes with foam. The acrid smell was replaced by the chemical odor of fire suppressant. "You saved my life," Diana said suddenly, turning to Raymond. It wasn't gratitude, it was an assessment, a statement of fact. "Anyone would have done the same," he replied, uncomfortable with her intense scrutiny. "No," she said firmly. "And they wouldn't have," a paramedic interrupted them, insisting on examining Diana despite her protests. Raymond took the opportunity to step away, suddenly aware of his soot-stained uniform and the sweat cooling on his skin. His shift had ended 20 minutes ago. Sophia would be waiting at the after-school program, wondering where her father was. The thought of his daughter sent a surge of belated panic through him. He could have died, leaving her alone in the world. "Mr. Mitchell." Raymond turned to find Diana standing behind him, a white bandage now adorning her forehead. Her posture was rigid, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Winters, you should be resting. I understand you're on the night maintenance crew." "Yes, ma'am." The formality slipped out automatically. "Why were you still here? Your shift ended at 4. Raymond hesitated. "I was finishing up some work in the executive wing. The carpet cleaning ran long." Her eyes narrowed. "You were doing unauthorized overtime." Yes, I suppose I was." There was no point in lying. The cleaning had needed to be done, and they were understaffed since the layoff. Besides, he needed the extra money. Sophia's school trip was coming up, and he was still behind on rent after paying for her asthma medication last month. Diana's expression hardened. "That's grounds for termination, Mr. Mitchell." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Excuse me? Company policy is clear. All overtime must be approved by a supervisor." Raymond stared at her in disbelief. "I just pulled you from a burning car, and I'm grateful for that," she said, her tone suggesting anything but gratitude. "However, rules exist for a reason. I can't make exceptions, even under these circumstances." The injustice of it burned hotter than the car had. "I have a daughter," he said, his voice low and strained. "A 10-year-old. I'm all she has." Something flickered in Diana's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or a momentary flash of humanity, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Human resources will process your final paycheck. You'll receive 2 weeks severance." A security guard approached tentatively. "Ms. Winters, the police would like to speak with you." She nodded curtly. "I'll be right there." To Raymond, she added, "Clear out your locker by the end of the day." As she walked away, her heels clicking authoritatively despite her ordeal, Raymond stood frozen in shock. Around him, the emergency response continued. Firefighters securing the scene, security guards redirecting curious onlookers, paramedics standing by. None of them seemed to notice the janitor whose world had just collapsed. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from the after-school program. "Mr. Mitchell, Sophia is waiting. Program closes at 6 p.m. Raymond looked at his soot-blackened hands, at the still smoldering luxury car that had nearly become a coffin, at the back of the woman he'd saved as she spoke confidently with police officers. His life had changed twice in the span of 15 minutes. Once when he'd decided to run toward danger instead of away from it, and again when the person he'd saved had repaid his courage with cruelty. He turned and walked toward the service elevator, trying to figure out how he would tell his daughter that he no longer had a job. Raymond rode the service elevator to the basement in a daze, his mind struggling to process the whiplash of events. The elevator's dingy light flickered overhead, its soft hum a stark contrast to the chaos he'd just left behind. His hands were still trembling, adrenaline and anger coursing through his system in equal measure. In the employee locker room, he stared at his reflection in the cloudy mirror. Soot streaked his face, and a small cut on his forearm had left a trail of dried blood he hadn't even noticed in the commotion. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had just run into a burning vehicle to save someone's life. And for his trouble, he'd been discarded like yesterday's trash. He showered quickly in the staff facilities, grateful he kept a spare uniform in his locker. As the water sluiced away the physical evidence of his heroism, his thoughts turned to Sophia. How would he tell her? How could he explain that the man who taught her to always do the right thing had been punished for exactly that? Raymond's phone buzzed again as he was dressing. The after-school program coordinator, Mr. Mitchell, "We close in 30 minutes. Please advise," he texted back quickly. "On my way. Emergency at work. So sorry." The irony wasn't lost on him. An emergency at work indeed, one that had cost him that very work. As he was emptying his locker, Raymond's supervisor, Carl, entered the room. The older man's face was etched with concern. "Jesus, Ray, I just heard. Are you okay?" Raymond nodded stiffly. "I'm fine." Words spreading about what you did. "Pulling the CEO out of a burning car, that's hero stuff, man." "Yeah, well, heroes don't pay rent." Raymond shoved his personal items into a duffel bag. "She fired me. Carl, right there on the spot." Carl's mouth fell open. "What? That can't be right. Unauthorized overtime? Company policy?" The bitter words tasted like ash in his mouth. "That's insane. After what you did, let me talk to HR. There's no way." "Don't," Raymond interrupted. "I don't want charity, and I definitely don't want to work for someone like her." He zipped the bag closed with finality. "Just make sure they send my last check. I've got bills to pay." Carl looked helpless, a rare expression for the usually capable supervisor. "What will you do?" Raymond shouldered his bag. "Pick up my daughter. Figure out the rest tomorrow." As he headed for the exit, Carl called after him. "Everyone's going to hear about this. Ray, it's not right." Raymond simply raised a hand in acknowledgement without turning back. The drive to Sophia's after-school program was a blur. Raymond found himself at red lights with no memory of the streets he'd traveled to get there. His mind kept replaying the moment of impact, the car crumpling, flames erupting, the weight of Diana Winters in his arms as he carried her to safety, then her cold eyes as she fired him, apparently untroubled by the contradiction. He arrived at the school with 5 minutes to spare. Sophia was sitting alone at a table in the multi-purpose room, her dark curls falling forward as she concentrated on a book. The sight of her, so small, so serious, so unaware that their precarious life had just become dramatically more unstable, sent a pang through Raymond's chest. "Daddy!" she exclaimed when she spotted him, her face lighting up. At 10, she was still young enough to be unself-conscious about her enthusiasm for her father, though he knew those days were numbered. "You're late. Ms. Patel was about to call you again." "I know, sweet pea. I'm sorry. There was an emergency at work." He signed the checkout sheet while Sophia gathered her belongings. "What kind of emergency? Did someone spill something really big?" Her innocent question twisted the knife. "Something like that. I'll tell you about it at home." As they walked to the car, Sophia chatted about her day. A science project on ecosystems, drama in the lunchroom when Tyler Jenkins spilled milk all over Mackenzie's new shoes, the book she was reading about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Raymond made appropriate noises of interest, but his mind was racing ahead to practical concerns. Their rent was due in 10 days. His meager savings would cover it, but then what? 2 weeks severance wouldn't get them far. He had some applications out with other buildings, but nothing promising yet. "Daddy, are you listening? You look weird." Raymond forced a smile. "Sorry, honey. Just thinking about what to make for dinner. Can we have spaghetti, please?" "Sure thing." Spaghetti was cheap. They'd be eating a lot of it in the coming weeks. At their small apartment, Raymond went through the motions of their evening routine, helping with homework, cooking dinner, checking that Sophia had packed her backpack for the next day. All the while, the weight of his situation pressed down on him, making every mundane task feel like moving through molasses. After dinner, as Sophia was setting up her weekly video call with her aunt in California, Raymond's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. "Mr. Mitchell, this is James Rivera from Channel 7 News. We've heard about your heroic rescue of Arcturus CEO Diana Winters today, and we'd love to get your side of the story." Raymond's stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "One of your co-workers contacted our tip line. They mentioned you were fired immediately after saving Miss Winters' life." "Is that accurate?" Raymond glanced at Sophia, who was laughing at something her aunt had said on the video call, blissfully unaware. "I can't talk about this right now," he said quietly. "Mr. Mitchell, this is a story people should hear. What Miss Winters did, I said not now. Raymond ended the call. Almost immediately, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, please consider speaking with us. This kind of corporate callousness needs to be exposed. We can arrange compensation for your interview. Compensation. The word hung in his mind. He could certainly use the money, but did he want to become a media spectacle? Did he want Sophia to see her father paraded across local news as the heroic victim of corporate cruelty? Before he could consider further, another call came in. Carl. Ray, you need to check the company email. Right now. I can't. I've been fired. Remember, my access is probably already revoked. It's not. Trust me. Just look. Frowning, Raymond opened his email on his phone. At the top of his inbox was a message from Diana Winters herself, sent to the entire company. Attention all Arcturus employees, it began. Today, our company experienced an unfortunate incident in the parking garage involving my vehicle. I want to acknowledge the quick thinking and bravery of maintenance team member Raymond Mitchell, who assisted me during this incident. However, I must also reinforce that company policies regarding overtime authorization exist for important reasons related to budget management and worker safety. These policies will continue to be strictly enforced without exception. Human Resources will be conducting a review of overtime procedures to ensure clarity for all staff moving forward. Raymond stared at the screen in disbelief. Not a word about firing him, not a hint of remorse, just a corporate non-apology that somehow managed to use his heroism as a platform to double down on the very policy she'd used to terminate him. She's trying to get ahead of the story, Carl said. PR must have told her this looks bad, really bad. As if to confirm this, Raymond's phone lit up with 3 more calls from different news outlets in rapid succession. What do I do, Carl? For the first time since the accident, Raymond felt truly overwhelmed. That's up to you, his former supervisor replied. But if I were you, I'd think carefully about who deserves your silence. After hanging up, Raymond sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone as it continued to buzz with calls and messages. Through the thin wall, he could hear Sophia's animated voice as she told her aunt about her day at school, unaware that their lives had just been upended, the right thing to do. He'd always tried to show Sophia what that looked like. But what was the right thing now? Stay quiet and struggle. Speak out and risk becoming a sideshow. The questions tumbled through his mind as the evening shadows lengthened across their small apartment. By morning, Raymond's story had exploded. He woke to dozens of missed calls, texts, and emails from journalists seeking comment. Outside their apartment building, 2 news vans were already parked, reporters sipping coffee as they waited for a glimpse of the hero janitor. As the morning headlines had dubbed him, Daddy. Why are those people outside with cameras? Sophia asked, peering through the blinds as she ate her cereal. Raymond gently guided her away from the window. They're reporters. Something happened at my job yesterday, and they think it's a news story. Sophia's brow furrowed. Is it because of the emergency? Yes. He sat across from her at their small kitchen table. Sophia, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, there was an accident at work. A car caught fire with someone inside, and I helped get them out. Her eyes widened, like a firefighter. Sort of, he smiled weakly. But afterward, the person I helped, my boss, she decided I broke a company rule, and I lost my job. The confusion on his daughter's face mirrored his own feelings. But you saved them. Why would they fire you? Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense. Raymond struggled to keep the bitterness from his voice. But don't worry, I'll find another job soon. Is that why those people are outside? Because it's not fair. Raymond nodded. Some people think it's an important story. Is it? He considered this. Was it just his personal grievance? Or was there something larger at stake? Maybe it is. It's about doing the right thing even when it's hard, and about how people with power should treat people without it. Sophia nodded solemnly. That sounds important. Raymond's phone rang again. Carl, hey, have you seen the news? Hard to miss it, Raymond replied, stepping into his bedroom for privacy. There are reporters outside my building. It's everywhere. Ray, social media, local stations, even some national coverage picking it up. Fire, the Ice Queen, is trending. Raymond winced. Jesus, that's not all. The stock is taking a hit. Board members are getting calls. I heard Jenkins in security say that Ms. Winters had an emergency meeting with PR and legal at 6 this morning. That's not my problem, Raymond said, though a small, vindictive part of him was satisfied. Well, it's about to be. HR just called me. The executive office wants to meet with you today. Raymond barked a short, humorless laugh. To what end? Threaten me with legal action if I talk to the press? I don't know, man. But if I were you, I'd hear them out. This could be your chance to get your job back. Maybe more. After hanging up, Raymond stared at the wall, considering his options. Part of him wanted to ignore the request, to let Diana Winters stew in the PR disaster she'd created. But the practical side of him, the father who needed to provide for his daughter, knew he couldn't afford such pride. Sophia, he called, returning to the kitchen. Change of plans today. You're going to spend the day with Mrs. Gonzalez next door. But it's Saturday. We were going to the park. I know, sweet pea, and I'm sorry, but I have an important meeting. We'll go tomorrow, I promise. After arranging childcare with his kindly neighbor, Raymond faced his next challenge, getting past the reporters. He texted Carl, who arranged for security to meet him at a side entrance to the building. It felt surreal, being escorted through his former workplace like a VIP, especially when just 2 days ago, he'd been invisible to most of the people who now openly stared as he passed. He was led to a conference room on the executive floor, a space he'd cleaned countless times, but never expected to occupy as a participant. Inside waited a small group. Diana Winters, stone-faced at the head of the table, a woman he recognized as the head of PR, and a stern-looking man in an expensive suit, who was introduced as corporate counsel. Mr. Mitchell, Diana began without preamble. Thank you for coming. Raymond remained standing just inside the doorway. I didn't have much choice. Please, sit, she gestured to a chair across from her. He reluctantly complied, noting the faint bruise on her forehead where she'd struck the steering wheel, the only visible evidence of her ordeal. I'll be direct, Diana continued. Your termination has created a situation that requires immediate resolution. A situation, Raymond repeated flatly. That's what you call firing the person who saved your life. The PR director flinched, but Diana's expression remained impassive. The circumstances were unfortunate. Unfortunate. Raymond leaned forward. Ms. Winters, I pulled you from a burning car. I risked my life, and you fired me on the spot because I stayed late to finish a job your budget cuts made impossible to complete during regular hours. Mr. Mitchell, the lawyer began, but Diana raised a hand to silence him. You're right, she said simply. The admission hung in the air, unexpected and jarring. And my actions were indefensible, she continued. I was in shock, disoriented from the accident, and I responded with rigid adherence to policy instead of appropriate human judgment. Raymond studied her face, searching for sincerity beneath the carefully chosen words. We would like to offer you reinstatement, she said, with a substantial raise and compensation for emotional distress. The lawyer slid a document across the table. The figure at the bottom made Raymond's eyes widen. It was more money than he'd make in 3 years. And in exchange, I sign an NDA and smile for the cameras, he asked. Diana met his gaze directly. We're prepared to make changes to overtime policies for maintenance staff and to fund the after-school program you use for your daughter. Raymond's head snapped up. How do you know about my daughter's after-school program? A flicker of discomfort crossed Diana's face. We did our research. You mean you investigated me? My personal life. We needed to understand who we were dealing with. Who you were dealing with, Raymond repeated slowly. I'm not some PR problem to manage, Ms. Winters. I'm a person who did the right thing and got punished for it. Diana leaned back slightly. For the first time, she looked uncertain. What do you want, Mr. Mitchell? The question caught him off guard. What did he want? His job back, money, an apology, justice, whatever that meant in this context. I want you to understand what you did, he said finally. Not just to me, but to everyone who works in this building. The message you sent when you fired me is that loyalty and courage mean nothing compared to the bottom line. Diana was silent for a long moment. Then, with a glance at the PR director and lawyer, she said, Could you give us the room, please? After they left, she stood and walked to the window, her back to Raymond. "Do you know how I got this job, Mr. Mitchell? I assume it involves an MBA from somewhere prestigious and a lot of networking." A small, bitter smile curved her lips. "That's part of it. The other part is that I've spent 20 years being twice as prepared, twice as tough, and half as emotional as every man in the room. I've made decisions that have cost people their livelihoods because the alternative was letting the company fail and costing even more people their job." She turned to face him. "When my car hit that pillar, I thought I was going to die. When you pulled me out, I was disoriented, yes, but I was also afraid. Afraid of what? Of appearing weak, of making decisions based on emotion rather than policy, of establishing a precedent of exceptions." She shook her head. "It sounds absurd now, saying it out loud." Raymond was surprised by her candor, but not entirely sympathetic. "So you fired me to prove you were still in control?" "I fired you because it was easier than acknowledging I owed you my life." She returned to the table. "But I do owe you my life, Mr. Mitchell, and I'm not sure what the fair compensation for that is." Raymond sat in stunned silence, processing Diana's unexpected vulnerability. The Ice Queen's facade had cracked, revealing something almost human beneath. "I don't want your money," he said finally. "At least, not as hush money." "Then what do you want?" Diana asked again, her tone genuinely curious. Raymond considered the question. "I want my job back, yes, but with actual changes, not just for me, but for everyone in maintenance. Proper staffing levels, reasonable overtime policies, and no retaliation against anyone who spoke to the press about this." Diana nodded slowly. "That's achievable." "And," Raymond continued, finding his courage, "I want you to come with me." Her eyebrows rose. "Come with you where?" "To my apartment, to meet my daughter, to see what your budget cuts and rigid policies actually mean for the people who keep this building running." Diana's expression closed like a shutter. "That's not necessary." "It is, if you want me to believe you understand what you did." A silent battle of wills ensued, neither willing to back down. Finally, Diana exhaled sharply. "Fine. When? Today? Now? That's not possible. I have meetings all—" "You almost died yesterday," Raymond interrupted. "I think the meetings can wait." Diana stared at him, clearly unaccustomed to being challenged. After a long moment, she reached for her phone. "Give me 15 minutes to rearrange my schedule." 30 minutes later, they were in Diana's sleek replacement company car, navigating through midday traffic. The irony of riding in luxury after being fired wasn't lost on Raymond. Diana drove with the same precision she seemed to apply to everything, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, the only indication of any lingering trauma from yesterday's accident. "Your security team was reluctant to let you leave without them," Raymond observed. "They'll get over it." The conversation lapsed into uncomfortable silence. Raymond glanced at her profile. The perfect posture, the expensive haircut, the faint bruise partially concealed with makeup. Yesterday, he'd carried this woman from a burning vehicle. Today, they were virtual strangers with nothing in common except that moment of crisis. "Why did you do it?" Diana asked suddenly, eyes still on the road. "Do what?" "Risk your life for me. You didn't know me. And from what I've gathered, I wasn't particularly popular among your colleagues." Raymond considered the question. "It wasn't a conscious decision. I saw someone in danger, and I acted. That's simple. That's simple." Diana frowned slightly, as if his answer was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "Most people would have called 911 and waited for professionals." "Maybe, but you wouldn't have survived that long." The blunt assessment seemed to unsettle her. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Raymond's apartment building was a stark contrast to the gleaming Arcturus headquarters, a weathered 6-story walk-up in a working-class neighborhood. Diana parked in front, her luxury vehicle looking distinctly out of place among the older models lining the street. "The elevator's broken," Raymond said as they entered the shabby lobby. "Has been for about 3 months. Management keeps promising to fix it." Diana's expression revealed nothing as they climbed 4 flights of stairs. Raymond unlocked his apartment door and called out, "Sophia, I'm home, and I've brought someone with me." Mrs. Gonzalez appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes widened when she spotted Diana. "Raymond, I didn't know you were bringing company." She lowered her voice. "The reporters are gone, but they left cards." "Thanks, Elena. This is Ms. Winters. He hesitated. My former employer. Recognition dawned on Mrs. Gonzalez's face. Oh, the one from the car. She gave Diana a cool, appraising look before turning back to Raymond. Sophia's in her room. I made enchiladas for lunch. There's plenty if you're staying. After Mrs. Gonzalez left, Diana surveyed the apartment. It was small but meticulously maintained, the furniture well-worn but clean, the walls adorned with Sophia's artwork and school certificates. It was the home of someone who took pride in what little they had. Daddy! Sophia emerged from her bedroom, stopping short when she spotted Diana. Oh, hello. Sophia, this is Miss Winters. She's the person I helped yesterday. Diana seemed momentarily at a loss, clearly unaccustomed to interacting with children. Hello, Sophia. Sophia studied her with undisguised curiosity. You're the one who fired my dad even though he saved you. Diana blinked, caught off guard by the direct question. Yes. That was a mistake. My dad says everyone makes mistakes, but you should apologize when you do. Raymond suppressed a smile. Sophia, no, she's right. Diana interjected. She knelt to Sophia's level somewhat awkwardly. I made a very big mistake, and I am sorry. Your father did something incredibly brave, and I responded poorly. Sophia considered this. Are you going to give him his job back? We're discussing that. He needs his job. We need the money for rent and for my medicine. Sophia pointed to an inhaler on the coffee table. I have asthma. Diana's gaze lingered on the inhaler. I see. Let's have lunch, Raymond suggested, sensing Diana's discomfort. Mrs. Gonzalez made her famous enchiladas. The meal was a surreal experience. The CEO of Arcturus Technologies sitting at their small kitchen table, cautiously sampling homemade enchiladas, while Sophia chatted about school and her upcoming science fair project. Diana ate little, but Raymond noticed her taking in everything, the carefully rationed portions, the stack of medical bills partially hidden beneath a fruit bowl, the ceiling water stain that maintenance had promised to fix months ago. So, Sophia asked between bites, are you rich? Sophia, Raymond admonished gently. It's all right, Diana said. Yes, by most standards, I am. Then why do you need to cut budgets and make people lose their jobs? The innocent question landed like a grenade. Diana set down her fork. It's complicated. Companies have to make difficult decisions sometimes to stay profitable. But you have enough money, right? So why can't other people have enough too? Raymond watched Diana struggle to formulate an answer that would satisfy a 10-year-old's sense of fairness. It was perhaps the most genuine he'd seen her. The truth is, Diana finally said, sometimes I make decisions based on numbers without thinking enough about the people those numbers represent. After lunch, Raymond showed Diana Sophia's room, tiny, with a second-hand desk where she did her homework, walls covered with drawings, and a star chart tracking her medication schedule. Diana lingered at the desk, examining a school assignment, an essay titled My Hero, with a carefully drawn picture of Raymond in his work uniform. She's a remarkable child, Diana said quietly as they returned to the living room, Sophia having excused herself to finish homework. She is, Raymond agreed. And everything I do is for her. Diana stood by the window, looking out at the neighborhood, so different from the high-rise view she was accustomed to. I understand now why you brought me here, do you? She turned to face him. You wanted me to see that my decisions affect real people with real lives, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. And you succeeded. She straightened her posture, switching back to business mode. I'd like to offer you a different position at Arcturus. Raymond frowned. I told you, I don't want charity. This isn't charity. It's recognition of capabilities that were being wasted in your previous role. She met his gaze directly. I need someone who sees what I miss, someone who understands the human impact of corporate decisions. I'd like you to head up a new department, employee advocacy and workplace environment. Raymond stared at her. You're not serious. I'm always serious, Mr. Mitchell. Especially about business decisions. I don't have the qualifications. You have exactly the qualifications I need. She crossed her arms. You risked your life without hesitation. You spoke truth to power even when it could cost you everything. And you've shown me a perspective I clearly needed to see. Raymond shook his head in disbelief. Yesterday you fired me. Today you want me in management. Yesterday I made a terrible mistake, Diana replied. Today, I'm trying to fix it, not just for PR purposes, but because it's the right thing to do. For the first time since the accident, Raymond saw something in Diana's eyes that looked remarkably like sincerity. Monday morning arrived with a surreal quality. Raymond stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting a tie he'd purchased the previous evening, his first in years. The man staring back at him looked like a stranger, clean-shaven, hair neatly trimmed, wearing a new button-down shirt and slacks instead of his familiar grey maintenance uniform. The weekend had passed in a whirlwind after Diana's unexpected job offer. He'd spent Saturday night researching Arcturus Technologies, trying to understand the corporate structure he was about to enter. Sunday had been dedicated to preparing Sophia for the changes ahead, explaining that Daddy would have different responsibilities now, different hours, but more stability. "Will you still pick me up from school?" she'd asked, her small face serious. "Some days I might have to work late," he'd explained. "But I'll make sure you always know the plan." She'd nodded solemnly. "Is Miss Winters still mean?" The question had made him pause. "I think she's complicated." Now, as he knotted his tie for the third attempt, Raymond wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. Was this a genuine opportunity or an elaborate PR stunt that would leave him exposed and vulnerable once the media spotlight faded? His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Car waiting downstairs. Professional wardrobe allowance arranged with HR. No pleasantries, no encouragement, just efficient instruction." Typical. The car was a sleek black sedan with a professional driver who opened the door without comment. Raymond settled into the leather back seat, feeling distinctly out of place. The drive to Arcturus was quick in the early morning traffic, but his anxiety mounted with each passing block. When they arrived, Diana was waiting in the lobby, a power move he recognized immediately. Normally, someone of her stature would have sent an assistant to escort a new employee. Her presence sent a clear message to everyone watching. This was personal. "Mr. Mitchell," she greeted him, offering her hand. "Welcome back to Arcturus." Several employees stopped to stare, whispering behind hands and phones. Raymond shook her hand firmly. "Thank you, Miss Winters. Your office is prepared," she continued, leading him toward the executive elevator, the one he'd previously only entered to clean. "We'll have an all-staff announcement at 10 to introduce your new position. Until then, I thought we could review your responsibilities and compensation package." The elevator ride was brief but uncomfortable, filled with the same awkward tension that had characterized their visit to his apartment. They were two people bound by extraordinary circumstances, but divided by nearly everything else. Diana's executive assistant waited at her office door, holding a leather portfolio. "The paperwork you requested, Ms. Winters and Mr. Alvarez from PR called again about the press release. Tell him it's approved as written." Diana dismissed the assistant with a nod and ushered Raymond into her office. The space was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Minimalist furniture in chrome and white leather, not a paper out of place on the glass desk. Raymond had cleaned this office dozens of times, but had never sat in one of the visitor chairs before. "Your office is 2 doors down," Diana said, settling behind her desk. "Similar setup, but slightly smaller. I thought proximity would be useful as you establish your department." Raymond nodded, still taking in the reality of his situation. "Here's what I'm proposing," Diana continued, sliding a document across the desk. "Director of Employee Advocacy and Workplace Environment, reporting directly to me. Salary commensurate with other director-level positions." The figure at the bottom of the page made Raymond's eyes widen. It was more than 5 times his previous salary. "This can't be right," he said, looking up. "It is. Along with standard executive benefits, health insurance with no deductible for you and Sophia, retirement matching, educational assistance program." Diana's expression remained businesslike. "I don't believe in underpaying talent. I appreciate that, but this is..." Raymond searched for the right word. "Excessive. It's market rate for the position's responsibilities," she countered. "Unless you'd prefer I offer you less money because of your background." The challenge in her tone was unmistakable. She was daring him to undervalue himself. "No," he said finally. "But I need to understand exactly what you expect from me." Diana leaned back slightly. "Your department will serve as an internal advocate for employee concerns, with particular focus on maintenance, security, and other support staff. You'll review policy changes before implementation to assess their human impact. You'll have authority to propose workplace improvements and a discretionary budget to implement them. And when we disagree, Raymond asked, because we will. For the first time that morning, Diana's professional mask slipped, revealing a hint of the vulnerability he'd glimpsed in her apartment. Then we'll have the difficult conversations before decisions are made, not after. I don't expect you to always agree with me, Raymond. I expect you to force me to see what I might otherwise miss. The use of his first name wasn't lost on him. This wasn't just a business transaction, it was a relationship being negotiated. Why me? He asked. You could hire someone with an MBA and corporate experience, someone who speaks your language. That's precisely why it needs to be you, she replied. I have plenty of people who speak my language. I need someone who speaks a different one. Before Raymond could respond, her phone buzzed. The press is gathering in the lobby for your introduction, she said after checking the message. Are you ready? No, he admitted, but I don't think I ever will be. So let's do it anyway. A small smile, perhaps the first genuine one he'd seen from her, briefly curved Diana's lips. That's the spirit. The lobby was packed with employees and journalists, a buzz of anticipation filling the air. When Diana and Raymond emerged from the elevator together, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by a flurry of camera clicks and whispers. Diana approached the podium set up near the reception desk, Raymond standing awkwardly at her side. He scanned the crowd, spotting Carl and several of his former maintenance colleagues near the back, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. Good morning, Diana began, her voice commanding immediate attention. Many of you are aware of the incident that occurred in our parking garage last Friday. What began as a routine day ended with an extraordinary act of courage, when Raymond Mitchell, a member of our maintenance staff, risked his life to pull me from my burning vehicle. Camera flashes intensified. Raymond kept his expression neutral, though his heart was racing. What you may not know is that immediately following this heroic act, I made a serious error in judgment. Diana's admission sent a ripple of surprise through the audience. Disoriented and operating on autopilot, I terminated Mr. Mitchell's employment over a minor policy infraction, the crowd murmured. Several journalists were frantically taking notes. It was not my finest moment, Diana continued, a hint of self-deprecation in her tone. And while I could attribute it to shock from the accident, the truth is more complicated. It revealed a blind spot in my leadership, a failure to fully recognize the humanity and value of every person who contributes to Arcturus's success. Raymond watched her with newfound respect. This wasn't the carefully sanitized corporate non-apology he'd expected. This was something closer to genuine accountability. Today, I'm announcing 2 changes, Diana said. First, effective immediately, Raymond Mitchell will join Arcturus as our new Director of Employee Advocacy and Workplace Environment, reporting directly to me. In this role, he'll ensure that employee concerns across all levels are heard and addressed. Another murmur, louder this time. Raymond could see the shock on his former colleagues' faces. Second, Arcturus is committing to a comprehensive review of our workplace policies, particularly those affecting our essential support staff. Mr. Mitchell's first task will be leading this review, with full authority to recommend changes. Diana turned toward Raymond. Would you like to say a few words? The invitation caught him off guard. He hadn't prepared remarks, hadn't expected to speak. But as he stepped to the podium, facing the sea of curious faces, he knew exactly what needed to be said. Raymond gripped the edges of the podium, acutely aware of the cameras trained on his face. He'd never spoken to more than a handful of people at once, let alone a crowd of journalists and corporate employees. But as he looked out at the sea of expectant faces, his nervousness crystallized into resolve. 3 days ago, he began, his voice steadier than he'd expected. I was mopping floors in this building. Today, I'm standing behind this podium. That's a journey I never imagined taking. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I've worked in maintenance for 15 years. In that time, I've become invisible to most of the people I serve. We all have, the cleaners, security guards, cafeteria staff. We're the background machinery that keeps everything running smoothly. You don't notice us until something breaks. Several heads nodded in the crowd. Raymond spotted Carl giving him an encouraging thumbs up. When I pulled Ms. Winters from that car, I wasn't thinking about corporate policy or professional advancement. I was just doing what anyone would do in that situation. Or at least, what I hope anyone would do. He glanced at Diana, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. What happened afterward revealed something important, not just about Arcturus, but about how we structure our workplaces and our society. We've created systems where following protocol can become more important than basic human decency, where someone can save a life and lose their livelihood in the same hour. The journalists were scribbling frantically. Raymond could practically see tomorrow's headlines forming. I'm accepting this position because I believe Mrs. Winters is sincere in wanting to address these issues. I believe Arcturus can become a company where every employee is valued, where policies serve people rather than the other way around. And I intend to hold leadership accountable to that vision, starting with myself. He stepped back from the podium, surprised to hear applause rippling through the lobby. Diana moved forward to wrap up the press conference, fielding a few carefully selected questions before security began ushering the media toward the exits. As the crowd dispersed, Carl approached, shaking his head in amazement. From fired to director in 3 days. That's got to be some kind of corporate record. I'm still processing it myself, Raymond admitted. You'll do great, Carl said, clapping him on the shoulder. Just don't forget us little people when you're up there with the suits. That's the whole point, Carl. I'm there to make sure no one forgets. Before they could continue, Diana appeared at Raymond's side. The board is waiting to meet you, she said. Are you ready? Raymond nodded to Carl and followed Diana back to the elevator. That was well done, she said as the doors closed. Authentic without being accusatory. The press will love it. I wasn't performing for the press, Diana studied him. No, I don't think you were. That's what makes you effective. The boardroom was intimidating. A massive table of polished walnut surrounded by leather chairs, each occupied by someone whose net worth probably exceeded Raymond's lifetime earnings. Diana made brisk introductions, and Raymond tried to memorize the names and faces of the people who would be scrutinizing his every move in the coming months. Mr. Mitchell, began an older man with silver hair. The chairman, Philip Hammond. Your story is unusual. Some might say unprecedented. Yes, sir, I'll be frank. Some board members have concerns about appointing someone with no corporate experience to a director-level position. What would you say to those concerns? Raymond met the chairman's gaze directly. I'd say they're valid. I don't have an MBA or corporate experience. What I do have is 15 years of watching how decisions made in rooms like this affect the people who implement them. I've seen good intentions create impossible workloads. I've seen cost-cutting measures that saved thousands on paper but cost millions in morale and turnover. He gestured toward Diana. Ms. Winters is betting that perspective is valuable. I intend to prove her right. The chairman exchanged glances with several board members before nodding slowly. Well put. We'll be watching your progress with interest. The meeting continued with discussions of Raymond's department structure, reporting mechanisms, and integration into the existing corporate framework. By the time it concluded, Raymond's head was swimming with acronyms and corporate jargon he'd need to master quickly. As they left the boardroom, Diana checked her watch. We should get you settled in your office. Your assistant starts tomorrow. I've arranged for someone with experience helping executives transition into new roles. I have an assistant. The concept was surreal. Of course, you'll need one. Diana led him down the hallway to a corner office with his name already on the door. This used to belong to our former VP of operations. We've redecorated it for you. The space was impressive, smaller than Diana's office, but still larger than Raymond's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a different but equally spectacular city view. The furniture was modern, but less austere than Diana's, with comfortable seating and warm wood tones. On the credenza behind the desk sat a framed photo of Sophia that Raymond recognized from his apartment, alongside a small potted plant. How did you get this? he asked, picking up the photo. "I had someone retrieve it this morning. I thought you might want a reminder of why you're here." Diana hesitated, then added, "Was that overstepping?" The gesture was surprisingly thoughtful from someone he'd considered completely cold just days earlier. "No, thank you." Diana nodded toward a tablet on the desk. "You'll find the employee handbook, organizational charts, and current policies loaded on there. I've scheduled briefings with each department head over the next week so you can understand their operations. Your calendar is already populated." Raymond ran his hand along the desk's smooth surface, trying to reconcile this new reality with the life he'd been living just 3 days ago. "This is a lot to take in." "It is," Diana agreed. "And there will be people hoping you fail. Both those who think you're unqualified and those who fear what your success might mean for the status quo, including you." The question slipped out before he could reconsider. Diana's expression flickered with something like surprise. "No. Despite what you might think of me, I don't set people up to fail. Your success is now tied to mine. We sink or swim together." Their conversation was interrupted by Diana's assistant appearing at the door. "Ms. Winters, your 11 o'clock is waiting. And Mr. Mitchell, there's a Carl Jenkins here to see you. He says it's urgent." Diana glanced at Raymond. "I'll leave you to it. We'll reconvene at 4 to review your first impression." After she left, Carl entered, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the executive suite. "Nice digs," he said, whistling low. "Guess they really are serious about this. What's up, Carl? Is everything okay?" Carl shifted his weight nervously. "Not exactly. The maintenance crew is in an uproar. Half of them think you've sold out, and the other half are fighting over who gets to be your new best friend so they can cash in on your connections." Raymond sighed. He'd anticipated resistance, but not so quickly. "Or what do you think I should do? They need to hear from you directly, not as the new director, but as the guy who worked alongside them until 3 days ago." Raymond glanced at his tablet, at the meticulously planned calendar of high-level meeting. Then he looked at Carl, a reminder of where he'd come from, of the people he was supposed to represent. "Lead the way," he said, standing up. "Let's go talk to them." The maintenance break room fell silent as Raymond entered. It was a cramped space in the basement with fluorescent lighting that buzzed incessantly, mismatched furniture, and a refrigerator that groaned like it was on its last leg. Just days ago, this had been his domain, a place where he'd eaten countless lunches, shared jokes, and commiserated with colleagues about difficult shifts. Now, dressed in his new business attire, he felt like an intruder. 12 pairs of eyes stared at him with emotions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. These were the people who kept Arcturus functioning: plumbers, electricians, general maintenance workers and cleaners, the invisible workforce. "Nice suit," commented Maria, a night shift cleaner who'd worked at Arcturus for 20 years. Does it come with amnesia about where you came from?" Several workers chuckled, but there was little humor in the sound. Raymond took a deep breath. "I know what this looks like." "Do you?" asked Hector, an electrician nearing retirement. "Because it looks like you got a golden ticket while the rest of us are still down here breathing dust and fixing toilets." "It's not like that," Raymond insisted, loosening his tie. The gesture was unconscious, but telling, already feeling the constriction of his new role. "Then what's it like?" Maria challenged. "You saved the Ice Queen's life, and suddenly you're an executive. You think you still understand what it's like for us?" Raymond pulled up a chair, the same wobbly metal one he'd sat in countless times before, and straddled it backward, resting his arms on the backrest. The familiar posture seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. "Let me tell you exactly what happened," he said. He recounted the events of the past 3 days, the accident, the firing, the media explosion, and finally, Diana's offer. He didn't sugarcoat anything, including his own doubts and the awkward visit to his apartment. "She saw Sophia's asthma inhaler," he concluded. "She saw the water stain in our ceiling that management won't fix. She saw what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know if it really registered with her, but it was something." The room was quiet when he finished, the hostility somewhat diminished, though skepticism remained thick in the air. "So what now?" asked Darren, a young plumber's assistant. "You gonna forget about us once you're comfortable up there?" Raymond shook his head firmly. "That's exactly why I took the job. Look, I know it sounds like bullshit corporate speak, But I'm supposed to be your voice in those executive meetings. I need to know what's really happening down here, not the sanitized version that gets filtered up through middle management. And Ms. Winters is just going to listen to you, Hector scoffed. The woman who fired you after you saved her life. I don't know, Raymond admitted. But I know she'll never listen if no one's there to speak. Maria crossed her arms. What exactly do you want from us? Information, honesty, a chance. Raymond looked around the room, meeting each person's gaze. I need to know what's broken so I can try to fix it. Real problems, not just the ones they already know about. Silence hung in the air as his former colleagues exchanged glances, weighing his sincerity against their ingrained distrust of management. Finally, Hector spoke. The new cleaning chemicals they switched to last month to save money. 3 people have developed rashes, but HR said it's not work-related. Raymond pulled out his phone and made a note. Who specifically, and when did you report it? As Hector provided details, others began to chime in. Equipment that needed replacing, understaffing issues, scheduling problems that forced people to choose between family obligations and keeping their jobs. Raymond documented everything, asking clarifying questions and promising to investigate. For 30 minutes, the floodgates remained open. Raymond was both heartened by their willingness to share and dismayed by how many legitimate concerns had been systematically ignored or dismissed. I can't promise I'll fix everything, he said when they finally exhausted their list, but I can promise I'll try, and I'll always tell you the truth about what's happening, even when it's not what you want to hear. As the meeting wrapped up, Maria approached him privately. I've seen a lot of people climb the ladder and forget to look down, Raymond. Don't be one of them. I won't, he promised. My daughter's future depends on me remembering exactly where I came from. When Raymond returned to his office, he found Diana waiting, reviewing documents on her tablet. You're 4 o'clock, she reminded him. Though I see you had more pressing matters. Her tone was impossible to read. Was she annoyed? Impressed? Raymond couldn't tell. I needed to address some concerns with the maintenance staff, he said, deciding honesty was the only viable approach. They're skeptical about my new role. Understandable, Diana replied, setting her tablet aside. What did you tell them? The truth, that I'm here to be their voice, and I need their input to do that effectively. Diana nodded slowly. And did they believe you? Some did. Some are waiting to see if I deliver. Raymond hesitated, then pulled out his phone. I made a list of their most urgent concerns. There are safety issues we should address immediately. Diana's eyebrows rose slightly. Already compiling action items. Impressive. This isn't about impressing anyone, Raymond said firmly. There are people developing skin reactions to the new cleaning products. That's a liability issue and a human cost that far outweighs whatever we're saving on supplies. For a moment, Diana looked like she might bristle at his directness. Instead, she extended her hand. Show me the list. Raymond handed over his phone, watching as she scrolled through his notes, her expression growing more serious with each item. Some of these can be resolved immediately, she said. Others will take time and resources. She looked up at him. This is exactly what I hired you for, Raymond, to bring these issues to light before they become larger problems. Raymond felt a tentative sense of accomplishment. So we can address them. We can assess them, Diana corrected. Prioritize them, resolve what we can. But resources aren't infinite, and you'll need to learn to make the same difficult choices executives make every day. The reminder was sobering. Raymond had moved from one who requested resources to one who would help allocate them. A fundamental shift in perspective he was still struggling to internalize. I understand, he said, though not entirely convinced he did. Where do we start? With data, Diana replied. The anecdotes are compelling, but in the boardroom, numbers speak louder. We need to document these issues systematically, correlate them with productivity metrics, safety records, turnover costs. Raymond frowned. These aren't just numbers, they're people's health and livelihoods. I'm aware, Diana said, her tone cooling slightly. But if you want to effect real change, you need to learn to translate human concerns into the language of business. Otherwise, you're just another voice they can dismiss. Their conversation was interrupted by Diana's assistant, appearing at the door. Miss Winters, the CFO needs you for an urgent call with investors, and Mr. Mitchell, Your daughter's school is on line 1. Raymond's heart rate spiked. Sophia? Is everything okay? They didn't say, sir. Diana nodded toward the phone. Take it. We'll continue this later. As she left, Raymond grabbed the receiver, identifying himself with a voice tight with worry. Mr. Mitchell, this is Nurse Patel from Lincoln Elementary. Sophia had an asthma attack during PE. She's stable now, but school policy requires a parent to pick her up. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by a new anxiety. It was his first day. How would it look if he left early? What message would that send to Diana and the board about his commitment? Then he remembered the photo on his credenza, the reminder of why he was here. The entire point of this job was to create a workplace that acknowledged employees as whole humans, with responsibilities beyond their work. Raymond checked the time. It was nearly 5 anyway. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He told the nurse. He sent a brief email to Diana explaining the situation, then gathered his things. As he headed for the elevator, he caught his reflection in a glass wall panel. The stranger in the suit looked a bit more familiar now. Still Raymond Mitchell. Still a father first, just with a different set of tools to protect what mattered most. The first month of Raymond's new role passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and steep learning curves. Every day brought fresh challenges, corporate jargon to master, political dynamics to navigate, and the constant balancing act between his responsibilities at Arcturus and his commitment to Sophia. The transition wasn't seamless. There were days when Raymond felt like an imposter in his own skin, when the gap between his previous life and his current reality seemed unbridgeable. But there were victories too. Within his first week, Raymond had secured approval to replace the industrial cleaning products that were causing skin reactions. By the end of the second week, he'd implemented a more flexible scheduling system for maintenance staff with family obligations. Small wins, perhaps, but they established his credibility both with his former colleagues and with the executive team watching his every move. Diana proved to be a complex mentor, cold and demanding one moment, unexpectedly insightful the next. They clashed regularly, Raymond's instinct for immediate action often butting against Diana's insistence on process and data. Yet beneath their differences, a grudging respect was taking root. You need to work on your presentation skill, Diana remarked after Raymond's first board update. They were walking back to their offices, Diana's heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Your content was solid, but you need to project more authority. I'm not concerned with how I look, Raymond replied. I care about results. Diana stopped walking and turned to face him. In an ideal world, results would speak for themselves. In the real world, particularly the corporate world, perception shapes reality. If you want to champion these causes effectively, you need to master the medium as well as the message. Raymond bristled at the critique but couldn't entirely dismiss it. He had felt out of his depth in the boardroom, aware of the skeptical glances exchanged when he stumbled over financial terminology or failed to frame his proposals in terms of ROI and shareholder value. Fine, he conceded. What do you suggest? Executive coaching. I've arranged for sessions with the same consultant who worked with me when I became CEO. The gesture was unexpectedly thoughtful. Thank you, Raymond said, genuinely surprised. Diana's expression remained impassive. It's a business investment, not a personal favor. Your success reflects on my judgment. Despite her dismissive tone, Raymond was beginning to see through Diana's carefully constructed facade. The woman who had fired him in a moment of panic was gradually revealing other dimensions: a sharp, strategic mind, an unwavering work ethic, and occasionally brief glimpses of something that might almost be vulnerability. One evening, working late to prepare for a crucial presentation, Raymond found Diana still in her office, well past 8 o'clock. The executive floor was deserted, the cleaning crew having already completed their rounds. Through her open door, he could see her standing at the window, gazing out at the city lights, a glass of amber liquid in her hand. Ms. Winters, he called softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, and Raymond was struck by how tired she looked without her usual mask of perfect composure. "Raymond, I thought everyone had gone home. I needed to finish this proposal for tomorrow." He hesitated, then asked, "Are you all right?" Diana took a sip from her glass. "Fine, just reviewing the quarterly projections." It was clearly a deflection, but Raymond decided not to push. "I'll leave you to it then." "Actually," Diana said, surprising him, "I could use a second opinion on something." She gestured for him to enter, then retrieved a folder from her desk. "The board is considering closing the Rochester facility. It's underperforming, and the analysis suggests we could realize significant savings by consolidating operations here." Raymond frowned. "How many jobs would be affected?" 217. The number hung in the air between them. Raymond thought about what those jobs represented. 217 families, mortgages, college funds, healthcare plans. "What's the timeline?" he asked. "That's what I'm deliberating." Diana handed him the folder. "The financial case for closure is compelling, but I keep thinking about what you would say if this proposal crossed your desk tomorrow." Raymond studied her, trying to read the meaning behind her words. Was she genuinely seeking his input, or testing his loyalty to his new position versus his advocacy role? "I'd say we need to consider more than just the numbers," he answered carefully. "What's the human cost of closure versus the cost of attempting to turn the facility around? Have we explored all options for making it viable? And if closure is inevitable, how do we minimize the impact on those families?" Diana nodded slowly. "Draft me a proposal, alternative scenarios, costs, timelines. I want it on my desk by the end of the week." It wasn't a direct acknowledgement that she valued his perspective, but it was close enough. Raymond recognized it for what it was, a test, but also an opportunity to prove that his approach could coexist with sound business strategy. The Rochester facility proposal consumed Raymond's nights that week. He researched similar corporate turnarounds, consulted discreetly with industry experts, and developed 3 scenarios ranging from full closure to a phased revitalization plan. When he finally submitted the proposal, Diana's only response was a curt "thank you," leaving him wondering if his efforts would make any difference. 2 weeks later, he had his answer. Diana announced a hybrid approach. Parts of the facility would be repurposed for a new product line, while others would indeed be consolidated with headquarters. Job losses were limited to 43 positions, with generous severance packages and relocation opportunities for those affected. She didn't credit Raymond publicly, but as they left the announcement meeting, she said quietly, "Your proposal made me rethink our options. Good work." It was the closest thing to praise he'd received from her, and Raymond found himself unexpectedly pleased by the recognition. His growing influence at Arcturus didn't come without personal costs, however. The longer hours meant less time with Sophia, who was struggling to adjust to the new reality of their lives. The increased income had allowed them to move to a safer neighborhood with better schools, but Raymond often found himself missing the simpler routines of their old life. "You're never home anymore," Sophia complained one night, as Raymond tucked her in well past her bedtime, having just returned from another late meeting. "Even when you are home, you're always working on your computer." The accusation stung because it contained a painful truth. "I know, sweet pea. I'm still figuring out how to balance everything." "Do you like your new job better than being a janitor?" she asked, her voice small in the darkness. Raymond considered the question carefully. "It's different. As a janitor, I could help in small ways, make spaces clean and safe for people. In this new job, I might be able to help more people in bigger ways, but it's harder, and I'm still learning." "Ms. Winters doesn't seem nice," Sophia observed. At the company picnic, she didn't smile much. Raymond smiled at his daughter's perceptiveness. The company picnic had been Diana's reluctant concession to his proposal for more inclusive company events, ones where executives and support staff could interact as equal. Diana had attended for precisely the minimum time required, maintaining a polite but distinctly uncomfortable presence. "Miss Winters is complicated," Raymond explained. "She has a lot of responsibility, and I think it's hard for her to relax." "Like you now." Sophia's question was innocent but penetrating. Raymond felt a flutter of unease. Was he becoming more like Diana? Distant, consumed by work, disconnected from the everyday realities of life. The thought was disturbing. "I hope not," he said, kissing Sophia's forehead. "And if you ever think I am, you have my permission to tell me." Sophia yawned, already drifting towards sleep. "I will, promise." Later that night, Raymond sat at his kitchen table reviewing emails, Sophia's observation echoing in his mind. The truth was, despite their fundamental differences, he and Diana were beginning to understand each other in ways he hadn't anticipated. He'd glimpsed the weight she carried as CEO, the isolation of leadership, the constant pressure to appear infallible, and perhaps, he realized, she'd begun to see something in him too, a perspective that had been missing from her carefully constructed world of spreadsheets and strategic plans. A reminder of the human elements that couldn't be quantified, but were no less essential to Arcturus's success. 3 months into Raymond's tenure as director, Arcturus faced its first major crisis under his watch. A manufacturing defect had been discovered in their flagship medical device, a defect that posed no immediate danger to patients, but would require expensive voluntary recalls and replacement. The executive team was split on how to proceed, with some arguing for limited disclosure and others pushing for full transparency. The boardroom crackled with tension as arguments flew back and forth. Raymond sat quietly, absorbing the debate, keenly aware that he was still viewed as an outsider in these high-level discussions. Diana led the meeting with her characteristic efficiency, but Raymond noticed the tightness around her eyes, the slight strain in her voice that others might miss. Today, the legal minimum requires notification only to healthcare providers, the General Counsel was saying. We could implement a phased approach, beginning with high-risk patients. And what happens when the media discovers we've known about this for weeks and didn't immediately alert all affected patients? Raymond finally spoke up. We'd be crucified, and rightfully so, the CFO scoffed. With all due respect, Mr. Mitchell, the financial implications of a full recall are less devastating than the loss of public trust. Raymond finished firmly. This isn't just about legal liability, it's about who we are as a company. He turned to address Diana directly. When you pulled me into that burning car, you didn't stop to calculate the financial risk. You did what was right. This is no different. A hush fell over the room. Raymond had broken an unspoken rule by directly referencing the accident that had brought him into their ranks, an incident Diana had never discussed in these meetings. Diana's expression remained unreadable as she surveyed the faces around the table. Mr. Mitchell makes a valid point. Our reputation is a long-term asset that outweighs short-term financial consideration. She stood, signaling the end of discussion. We will proceed with full disclosure and a comprehensive recall. General Counsel, prepare the statements. Marketing, develop a communications strategy emphasizing our commitment to patient safety. Finance, revise the quarterly projections accordingly. As the meeting dispersed, Diana caught Raymond's eye and gave a subtle nod toward her office. Once inside, she closed the door and moved to the window, her back to him. "Ha, that was a risky move," she said finally. Invoking the accident, Raymond stood his ground. It was relevant to the discussion. It was personal. Business is personal, Raymond countered. That's what I've been trying to show you these past 3 months. Every decision we make affects real people, our patients, our employees, even ourselves. Diana turned to face him, studying him with that penetrating gaze that had once intimidated him. You've changed since you started here." "How so?" "You're more strategic. You pick your battles, but you haven't lost your moral compass." A hint of something like admiration crossed her features. "It's a rare combination." Raymond hadn't expected the observation or the implied compliment. "I've had a good teacher in corporate politics," he acknowledged, "though I hope I've taught a few lessons in return." A ghost of a smile touched Diana's lips. "Perhaps you have." The moment of connection was interrupted by Diana's assistant announcing an urgent call. As Raymond turned to leave, Diana called after him. "The company gala is next weekend. I expect you'll be attending." The annual gala was Arcturus's most prestigious event, a black tie affair for executives, board members, and major clients. Raymond had received the invitation, but had been considering declining. The thought of navigating high society while trying not to use the wrong fork seemed daunting. "I hadn't decided," he admitted. You should come, Diana said. Your presence would reinforce that your position is permanent, not just a PR stunt that's run its course. Raymond nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her suggestion. I'll be there. The week leading up to the gala was hectic. The medical device recall dominated Raymond's days as he worked to ensure the communications were clear and compassionate rather than coldly corporate. In the evenings, he scrambled to prepare for the event, renting a tuxedo, watching YouTube tutorials on formal dining etiquette, arranging for Mrs. Gonzalez to stay overnight with Sophia. "Ah, you look like a penguin," Sophia giggled as he tried on the tuxedo at home the night before the gala. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Raymond asked, adjusting the unfamiliar bow tie. "Good," she decided. "Penguins are dignified." Raymond kissed the top of her head. "Then I'll take it as a compliment." "Is Ms. Winters going to be there?" Sophia asked, suddenly serious. "Yes, she's hosting the event." Sophia considered this. She seems less scary now. At the company picnic, she actually talked to me. She asked about my science project. Raymond was surprised. He hadn't witnessed this interaction. "What did you tell her?" "That I'm studying air quality in different parts of the city because of my asthma. She said it was very practical research." Sophia paused. "I think she's lonely." The observation, coming from his perceptive 10-year-old, gave Raymond pause. He'd never considered Diana's personal life, or whether she even had one. In the months they'd worked closely together, she'd never mentioned family, friends, or any existence outside of Arcturus. The gala itself was as intimidating as Raymond had feared. Crystal chandeliers, classical music, waiters in white gloves circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres he couldn't pronounce. He recognized the board members, department heads, and a few celebrities whose names escaped him. Everyone seemed to know exactly where to stand, what to say, which glass to use. Raymond was nursing a drink in a corner, feeling distinctly out of place despite his rented finery, when Diana appeared at his side. She wore a sleek black gown, her usual severe hairstyle softened into elegant waves. For the first time, Raymond saw her not as his boss or as the Ice Queen, but simply as a woman, poised, beautiful, and, if Sophia's intuition was correct, possibly quite alone. "You clean up well, Mr. Mitchell," she observed, her tone lighter than usual. "So do you," he replied, then winced at his own awkwardness. "I mean, you always look professional, but tonight you look different," she supplied, mercifully ending his floundering. "Yes, different." A comfortable silence fell between them as they surveyed the glittering crowd. "How's Sophia?" Diana asked unexpectedly. Her science project on air quality seemed quite ambitious. Raymond blinked in surprise. "She mentioned you talked with her at the picnic. She's doing well. The new insurance plan has made managing her asthma much easier." Diana nodded. "Good. She's a remarkable child. Very insightful. She said something interesting about you, actually," Raymond ventured, emboldened by the unusually relaxed atmosphere. "She thinks you're lonely." He immediately regretted the word. They were too personal, too presumptuous. But to his surprise, Diana didn't bristle or retreat behind her professional mask. Instead, she took a sip of her champagne, considering the observation. "Children can be unnervingly perceptive," she said finally. "The position of CEO doesn't lend itself to genuine connections. People either want something from you or are afraid of you. Sometimes both." The candid admission created a sudden shift in the air between them. For a brief moment, they weren't CEO and former janitor, but simply two people acknowledging a shared human experience. "What about you?" Diana asked. "Do you have time for a social life between work and being a single father?" Raymond chuckled. "Not really. Most of my non-work hours are dedicated to Sophia, though lately even those have been limited." Diana's expression grew thoughtful. "Perhaps we've been working you too hard. Family should come first, Raymond. Even I know that." The use of his first name, rare in their professional interactions, didn't escape his notice, nor did the gentle emphasis on family, a value he wouldn't have expected her to prioritize. "Thank you," he said simply, "though I'm not sure you practice what you preach. When was the last time you took a day off?" Diana's laugh was genuine, if brief. "Touché," a board member approached, ending their moment of unexpected connection. For the rest of the evening, they circulated separately, fulfilling their respective social obligations. But something had shifted, Raymond realized. A boundary had been crossed, not inappropriately, But significantly, for the first time, he had glimpsed Diana Winters, the person, not just Diana Winters, the CEO. And perhaps, he thought as he watched her across the room, commanding attention with her mere presence, she had finally seen him as more than just the janitor who had pulled her from a burning car. 1 year to the day after the accident that had irrevocably changed both their lives, Raymond found himself back in the underground parking garage. The exact spot where Diana's Mercedes had collided with the concrete pillar was unremarkable now. No trace remained of the scorched concrete, the shattered glass, the desperate struggle to save a life that had unfolded there. He stood silently, hands in his pockets, remembering the heat of the flames, the weight of Diana's unconscious body in his arms, the terror and determination that had propelled him forward. It felt like a lifetime ago. "I thought I might find you here." Raymond turned to see Diana approaching, her heels echoing in the cavernous space. She was dressed for the board meeting scheduled that morning, a tailored navy suit, her hair pulled back in its usual precise style. But there was something different in her expression, a softness that hadn't been there a year ago. "Anniversary reflections?" she asked, stopping beside him. Raymond nodded. "It's strange. Sometimes it feels like it happened to different people." "In some ways, it did." Diana gazed at the unmarked spot where her car had burned. "We've both changed since then." The observation was undeniable. Raymond had grown into his role, shedding his initial insecurities to become a respected voice in the executive suite, while maintaining his connection to the employees he represented. And Diana, the Ice Queen, had gradually thawed, becoming more accessible, more willing to consider the human implications of her decisions. "The board meeting today," Raymond said. "Are you nervous?" Diana gave him a sidelong glance. "I don't get nervous about board meeting. This one's different. My proposal fundamentally changes how we structure compensation and benefits. Some board members won't like it." The proposal was the culmination of Raymond's year-long mission, a comprehensive plan to implement profit sharing for all employees, expanded healthcare coverage, subsidized childcare, and educational assistance programs. It was ambitious, expensive, and potentially transformative. "Let them challenge it," Diana said with surprising conviction. "The data supports your position. Employee engagement is up, turnover is down, and our last 2 quarters have exceeded projections. We can afford to invest in our people." Raymond studied her, still sometimes amazed by her evolution. "You know, when I first started, I expected to be fighting you on this every step of the way." A small smile curved Diana's lips. "So did I. I thought I was bringing in a token representative to appease the PR crisis. I didn't expect you to actually change how I think about running this company." The frank admission hung in the air between them, a testament to how far they'd come. "Sophia asked about you last night," Raymond said, changing the subject. "She wanted to know if you're coming to her science fair next week." Diana's expression softened further. "I wouldn't miss it. Her research on urban air quality is genuinely impressive. I've already spoken with our R&D department about developing a prototype based on her monitoring system." The relationship between Diana and Sophia had been an unexpected development over the past year. What had begun as awkward interactions at company events had evolved into a genuine mentorship, with Diana taking a personal interest in nurturing Sophia's scientific curiosity. She'd arranged tours of Arcturus's research facilities, connected Sophia with female scientists on staff, and even attended her soccer games on occasion. "She's thriving," Raymond acknowledged. "We both are, and I have you to thank for that." Diana shook her head. "No, you earned everything you've achieved here through merit and persistence. I simply provided an opportunity." "After firing me," Raymond reminded her with a wry smile. "One of my less impressive moments," Diana admitted. "Though in a strange way, I'm almost grateful it happened. It forced me to confront my own blind spots." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the soft hum of the ventilation system the only sound in the empty garage. "We should head up," Diana said finally. "The board won't wait, even for us." As they walked toward the elevator, Raymond noticed something he'd missed before. a small plaque mounted on the pillar where the accident had occurred. He stopped to read it. On this spot, Raymond Mitchell demonstrated exceptional courage and humanity, reminding us that our greatest asset is our people, he read aloud. When did this happen? I had it installed last night, Diana said, uncharacteristically hesitant. I thought, well, some moments deserve to be remembered. Raymond was touched by the gesture. Thank you. The elevator ride to the executive floor was quiet, both of them mentally preparing for the board meeting ahead. As they reached their floor, Diana paused before the doors opened. "No, whatever happens in there today," she said quietly, "I want you to know that your perspective has been invaluable to me, both professionally and personally." The sincerity in her voice took Raymond by surprise. "Thank you. That means a lot." The boardroom was already full when they arrived. Board members in expensive suits, department heads with their presentations ready, assistants hovering along the walls. Raymond took his seat near Diana at the head of the table. The proposal they'd spent months developing open on his tablet. Chairman Hammond called the meeting to order. "Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge a significant anniversary. 1 year ago today, an incident occurred that brought Mr. Mitchell into our executive ranks under rather unusual circumstances. Murmurs and knowing glances circulated around the table. While some of us, myself included, had reservations about this unorthodox appointment, I believe the results speak for themselves." Hammond continued. "Mr. Mitchell's employee advocacy department has become an integral part of our corporate structure, and his insights have proven valuable across multiple initiatives." Raymond nodded in acknowledgement, touched by the public recognition. Now, Hammond said, "I understand we have a major proposal on the agenda today concerning employee compensation and benefits. Ms. Winters, would you like to introduce this item?" Diana stood, commanding the room's attention with her presence. "Thank you, Chairman. Before I turn the floor over to Mr. Mitchell to present the details, I'd like to frame this proposal within our broader corporate strategy." She surveyed the faces around the table, making deliberate eye contact with each board member. "A year ago, I made a decision in a moment of crisis that revealed a fundamental flaw in my leadership approach. I prioritized rigid adherence to policy over human judgment and compassion. That mistake, firing the man who had just saved my life, could have been disastrous for Arcturus." The room was utterly silent, everyone riveted by Diana's unprecedented personal disclosure. "Instead, it became a catalyst for positive change," she continued. "It forced us to reevaluate not just our HR policies, but our entire corporate culture. The proposal before you today represents the culmination of that journey, a comprehensive strategy to invest in our most valuable resource, our people." She turned to Raymond. "Mr. Mitchell will now present the details." As Raymond rose to take her place at the podium, their eyes met briefly. In that moment of connection, he saw not the Ice Queen who had fired him, nor even the pragmatic CEO who had hired him, but a true ally, someone who had learned to balance the demands of leadership with genuine concern for the people in her care. He opened his presentation, confident in the strength of their proposal and in the partnership they had forged from the ashes of that burning car. Later that afternoon, after the board had approved their proposal with only minor modifications, Raymond found Diana in her office, staring out at the city skyline. "We did it," he said, unable to keep the triumph from his voice. Diana turned, a rare full smile illuminating her face. "We did, though I suspect this is just the beginning. The real work starts now. Implementation, metrics, proving the model sustainable. Always the pragmatist," Raymond observed with a chuckle. "Someone has to be." Her smile faded into something more contemplative. "This partnership has been unexpected, to say the least." Raymond leaned against the doorframe. "When you said you're fired, standing next to that burning car, I never imagined we'd end up here." Diana winced slightly at the memory. "Not my finest moment." "Maybe not," Raymond agreed, "but perhaps a necessary one for both of us." Outside the window, the afternoon sun glinted off neighboring skyscrapers, bathing the office in warm golden light. In the distance, Raymond could see the park where he and Sophia had often shared simple meals when money was tight, the school where she was now thriving, the community that had shaped his life before Arcturus. Diana followed his gaze. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been there that day, if someone else had pulled me from that car, or if no one had. I try not to think about that, Raymond admitted. I do, Diana said quietly. It reminds me that sometimes the most important things in life are the ones we can't plan for or control, the unexpected moments that change everything. Raymond considered her words. Like a CEO and a janitor finding common ground. Exactly like that. Diana checked her watch. Don't you have a daughter to pick up? It's almost 4. Raymond smiled at her, remembering Sophia's schedule. I do. We're celebrating tonight. Pizza and ice cream for the proposal approval. That sounds perfect, Diana said. And for a moment, Raymond thought he detected a note of wistfulness in her voice. Making a spontaneous decision, he asked, "Would you like to join us?" Surprise flickered across Diana's face, quickly replaced by uncertainty. "I wouldn't want to intrude on your celebration." "It's your victory too," Raymond pointed out. Ubim and Sophia would be thrilled. She's been working on a new experiment she's dying to show you. Diana hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that. Thank you." As they walked out together, Raymond reflected on the strange and winding path that had brought them to this moment. From a desperate rescue in a smoke-filled garage to a partnership that had transformed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone at Arcturus. Do you know," Diana said as they reached the elevator, "sometimes being wrong is the best thing that can happen to a person." Raymond smiled, "Even to the formidable Diana Winters, especially to her." Diana replied with unexpected candor. "It took a janitor pulling me from a burning car to teach me that leadership isn't about being infallible. It's about having the courage to acknowledge mistakes and learn from them." The elevator doors opened, revealing the lobby where, 1 year ago, Raymond had stood nervously beside Diana as she announced his appointment. Now they walked through it as equals, their improbable journey from antagonists to allies complete. Outside, the late afternoon sun warmed their faces as they stepped into a future neither could have imagined on that fateful day. A future shaped not by the fire that had brought them together, but by the mutual respect and understanding that had risen from its ashes.